To explain how this could happen, we have to go back to 2 days ago, day 2 leading up to the Aulus Hall incident. His archery skills were now well honed after he had survived in the forest for some time, and now he was seen in his hunting session. He was not talented in combat skills, so every time he went hunting, he forced himself to use a crossbow, but even after a semester and half of vacation, his proficiency in crossbow-related skills remained stagnant, especially recently. Around his residence, there were sometimes some visitors. He could only resign himself to that. The number of people who knew that he lived in the North Forest seemed to be increasing. Among the visitors he often met, there were 3 most important people. Visitor A was a genius magician, and her visiting hours were very random. She also often bothered him regarding the design of his cabin, such as adding a back door and so on, but Ed ignored her and quickly kicked her out, but she didn't give up so easily. She continued to pester him about the cabin design. She was very enthusiastic when talking about this. Ed just felt that Visitor A was very unpredictable, unlike Visitor A. Visitor B was someone he was quite welcoming. She was a second-year top-ranked student and a fairly reliable spirit sorcerer. She also sometimes brought him things every time she visited, and often helped him with his homework. He didn't mind her frequent visits and welcomed her without any inconvenience. This spirit sorcerer came every day, chatting with the spirits or helping with small things. Ed was very grateful for being greatly helped by her presence. Ed also praised her for doing a good job, but Janica immediately turned her face away while blushing. Ed, who didn't know her true feelings, could only be surprised to see that. Sometimes she was quite easy to understand, but sometimes there were parts that were difficult to understand about her. She even once asked how often Lucy came to his residence with a scary look. Even so, she was still an important visitor, and the main reason why he explained all this was because Visitor C. When it was night time with the moon shining so beautifully above the sky, she visited his residence accompanied by a maid. In this world, she was known as the Golden Daughter. She was the mastermind behind the scenes of Act 2. She was probably trying to gather useful people to take control of the Aulus Hall, but this time, Ed really didn't want to get involved, so he decided to refuse everything she offered. If he didn't get involved, everything would go according to the scenario. At least that's what Ed thought at the moment, until he heard from Lortell that Tote was unconscious. Ed was surprised why this was not going according to the scenario. He then asked why Tote fell unconscious. He immediately told Lortell to explain it in detail. Lortell was quite surprised when she saw the sudden change in his attitude. Originally Tote picked a fight with Taylor, but he was supposed to get beaten just enough by Taylor, because he was just showing his disbelief in Taylor defeating Glaskin. Everyone in the school knew that Taylor was beaten by Lucy with 1 blow, but for some reason, Tote then insulted Taylor by saying that he was even worse than that insect Ed Roth Taylor. And Zix, who heard that, immediately hit him hard in the face, which caused him to fall unconscious. Zix was very angry when he heard him insult Ed. Alvira, who saw the incident, said this was the first time she had seen Zix this angry before. Lortell could only sigh when telling that. She couldn't believe someone who was so emotional. She then assured Ed that his task was not difficult. He just needs to take this key from Ellis and get into the Aulus Hall, then open the door when the low-ranking students are gathering in front of the Aulus Hall. Hearing that, Ed then asked, why did she choose him when there are many people who can also do that? It's because she can't trust all of them, even if she offered them a lot of money. There is no guarantee that they will leak the truth to the Academy's internal investigators after this incident. If they leaked that Lortell from the first year was the mastermind behind all this, then her position would be threatened, so she couldn't trust them. Hearing that, Ed at that time realized that the reason Lortell asked for his help was because of his already bad reputation. Lortell then reassured him. Didn't he want revenge after being expelled from the Aulus Hall? But Ed said that he didn't really want to do that, but even so, he would still listen to her offer. Ed just felt he had to do it in moderation. Lortell smiled at that. She then offered 20 gold coins, and Ed agreed to that. He thought, before the story went further astray, he just needed to reset everything. Day 1 to the Aulus Hall incident. While studying, Ed then thought about the Aulus Hall incident scenario. The Aulus Hall possession incident occurred before the Sage's Scroll contest began. Lortell's ploy to drive the Academy's finances into complete madness, so this was like a stepping episode. If the scenario went as it should, Lortell, who succeeds in this conspiracy, will form an independent interest group within the Academy called Merchantry, thus creating a structure that rivals Princess Phenia's Student Association. The idealistic student association and the realistic merchantry. The most important thing is, whoever Taylor chooses will ultimately determine who the winning side is. So Ed decided to observe and join the side that seemed to be winning. He also needed to survive. The weather outside was raining, and Janica, who was visiting here, got rained on. She also felt that it would be better to go back to the dormitory. She originally thought that the rain would stop today. She felt that Ed must be difficult. She could come and go like she was camping, but he had to be here even in rainy weather like today. Hearing that, Ed said that he was just getting used to living here. Now that the vacation was almost over, it was time for Janica to move out of Aulus Hall. She never thought that the size of Dex Hall was so small. She needed to throw away a lot of things, so she offered it to Ed. If he needed anything, just tell her. He must need a lot of things. Ed didn't deny it. Janica said she had extra blankets, pillows, lanterns, and so on, as well as various other necessities and consumables, so she felt it was a pity to throw away these items, and throwing them away was troublesome. She also couldn't bring the furniture because it belonged to the Aulus Hall. Janica was very enthusiastic when she wanted to help him, and Ed happily accepted. Janica was happy to hear that, and said she would bring it all when the new semester started. Their attention was then distracted when they saw Lucy, who was standing still on the roof with the rain pattering all over her body. Janica then asked if she often did that. Ed replied, sometimes. Lucy's extraordinarily strong powers didn't come free of cost for her. She lived her life running away using her laziness as an excuse. No matter how many screws she had loose, she couldn't help but reflect on her life on rainy days like this one. Ed said she liked to do things like that when it rained. He told Janica not to think about it too much. He didn't really care either. Janica was very happy when she saw his indifferent attitude towards Lucy. Ed then suddenly called Janica. Janica was then confused by that. Come to think of it, she's still inside Aulus Hall. When the Aulus Hall gets occupied, protection runes will activate on a large scale, and lock all students inside their rooms. Janica would have no trouble escaping from there on her own, but Ed then said that he wanted to ask for her help. Janica then asked what it was. Ed then asked her, tomorrow night around 9 o'clock. Could she go out to the rose garden in front of the Aulus Hall? Janica was initially confused to hear that, but she then misunderstood when she heard the word rose garden. Ed did not immediately explain the specific reason, and would tell her later. He could not think of a way to explain it. Just in case, he had to first get Janica out of the Aulus Hall, and go somewhere not too far away, where she could avoid the storm. Janica then accepted that. With a heart full of joy, Janica then said goodbye and left under the patter of rain. Ed could only be silent to see that. He could only exhale. The rain would probably only stop during the school reopening ceremony in the morning. At that time, they would be able to see clear skies after a long time. After that, this forest will also definitely be filled with the scent of autumn, and this long vacation will finally come to an end. Day 0 towards the Aulus Hall incident. At exactly 9 p.m., inside the Aulus Hall, Zix was seen practicing hard. Even so, he felt that his practice was still lacking. He also felt that he should avoid reacting emotionally as much as possible. He did not expect Aika to be that angry. He then ended his training session, but he was then surprised when he looked out the window. There was a mysterious figure wrapped in a cloak running towards the Aulus Hall under the patter of rain. That figure was Ed. When he went inside, he was then guided by a maid. He asked what about the other maids. The maid replied, except for the main staff, most of them are gathered in a conference room. The head maid called them to gather to discuss important matters. The plan is to storm them there and block the entrance, since the person in command have been bribed. Ed feels that the plan will go smoothly. The maid also said that the item he mentioned earlier has been prepared. She put it in the corner. Ed thanked her for that. All the preparations were done, and the incident of controlling the Aulus Hall finally began. The lower-ranked students were very excited in voicing their opinions. They both held a torch which made the atmosphere even more unfavorable. They said that they could no longer stand this kind of treatment, and demanded the academy to uphold equality in learning. This is the land of learning, Will Rain also loudly said. Respond to our voice. And when the students were about to storm in forcefully, they were then shocked and they saw the door suddenly opened from the inside. Not wasting this opportunity, they then jointly entered to take control of the Aulus Hall. Will Rain then thanked the person who opened the door to them. That person was Ed. He had also kept a maid. He then half-heartedly said that he had long approved of the words he had been saying. Of course, he used to live luxuriously in Aulus Hall, but only after being expelled did he realize how fortunate his life was. Wilrain's body shook violently when he heard his praise. He was deeply touched to hear that. He then blamed himself for judging Ed after hearing some rumors. He just found out that he was someone so wise. He really had played a big role today. Ed just said that it was all this is thanks to him and immediately told him to leave. Wilrain then said that he would rely on him to take care of this place. Wilrain is the one who will bear all this. He can only apologize, and can only encourage him. He doesn't need to chase after the maids who escaped. Right now, the main maids are likely to report that they are trapped in the conference room. The head maid Alice, a protection magic circle expert, is under Lortell's control. With the activation of the protection magic circle, the protection magic circle that was supposed to be a protection for the students, instead turned to imprison the students. The students could only wonder what was really going on outside, if things would get better if they waited. Everything was going according to the scenario, and the mastermind who arranged all this, Lortell, then came and praised him. Everything was going more perfectly than she thought. She felt that she had made the right decision to trust and leave it to him, and the mastermind had now stepped onto the stage. Lortell visited him under the heavy patter of rain. It caused her socks to get wet, which was also the reason why she hated rainy days. Ed then asked her if she had been watching the situation from outside. Lortell only smiled slightly at the question as she walked closer to him. She then replied, "Once the academy staff started to interfere, the situation will be quickly obstructed, so we need to carry out our duties before that happens." Ed also thought like that and encouraged her. Although she felt this was a bit sudden, Lortell then asked him, had he ever killed someone? Ed was silent for a moment hearing that. He then replied no. Or rather not yet. Lortell then said that she had too, while chuckling, but she had often done similar things, because she had to survive. In order to survive, she stepped on the lives of others, and stabbed them in the back so that she would not be betrayed. She had no choice but to do so, and she had lived to forgive herself. But really, that was just self-justification. Golden Daughter Lortell's name was made like this. The fact that she did not deserve sympathy was something she realized. More than anything else, that was why, overwhelmed, she then asked, would he be willing to sympathize with someone like her? She was looking for someone similar. The feeling of loneliness came to both good and bad people. In order to get out of this loneliness, she was forced to look for someone who also entered the mud. Only by finding someone who was willing to sink with her to the bottom of the swamp could she possibly be saved. Of course Ed felt that person was not him. Ed then replied no. She had to take responsibility for her own decision. Lortell was silent for a moment hearing that. She then smiled slightly and said, stupidly I said something out of context. She then said that she had to go and carry out her duties. There was not much time. Ed could only stare at her who was now slowly walking away. He then could only sigh. Ed knew Lortell would now discuss the plan and what the next task would be with Alice. After causing the Aulus Hall protection magic circle to rage and handing over control of the magic circle to Wilrain, the low-ranked student representative, that way, Wilrain, as the representative of the low-ranked students protected by all sorts of defensive magic spread throughout Aulus Hall, would become the boss of the fourth floor, a scenario to subdue Wilrain's restlessness in the midst of the endlessly raging magic circle. Now, he just needed to sit tight and wait for Taylor to break in. If he wasted even a little time and lost, Taylor would rise to the second floor quickly. Getting hit a few times or getting injured during the game might happen, but it was a necessary sacrifice. In the Rose Garden, Janica was surprised to see a carriage coming this late. She felt like someone important had come. She wondered if she and Ed were even allowed to be here. Janica had been in the Rose Garden for some time according to Ed's directions. She also felt that Ed didn't know about the golden carriage. Ed had left her a note. He said that he needed to leave for a while because of some sudden business and asked her to wait for a while. Janica, who read that, then wondered if he was preparing something special. She was really looking forward to it. No matter whether it was the golden carriage or anything else, Janica would never leave the gazebo in the Rose Garden, no matter what, because for 3 days she had been thinking and curious about what story Ed wanted to tell. While feeling restless, she continued to listen to Ed's news from Marilda. Based on the reports from the spirits, Janica knew that not only Lucy, but also Princess Phineas, Belle Maya, Six, and even Lortell were seen visiting Ed's residence. Ironically, the fact that most of them were female students made her heart hurt even more. So she would wait for Ed no matter how long it was. While waiting for the arrival of her sweetheart, Janica then looked at whether her appearance was suitable with her iris flower hairpin, but she then felt that the Cosmos hairpin must be more beautiful. She paused for a moment after realizing that, then decided to return to the Aulus Hall to change her hairpin, and she headed to the Aulus Hall under the patter of rain. There were 3 figures now standing in front of the Aulus Hall. They were Taylor, Isla and Elvira. Isla then wondered if entering the Aulus Hall was really the right decision. Elvira was very unhappy with her indecision. She had spread very expensive herbs in her room. Even so, Isla felt that maybe it was better for them to wait for the academy staff to handle it. Elvira certainly did not agree with that. If the herbs were not collected in time and preserved with magic, their properties would change. Such a small difference could change the results of the experiment. They certainly knew what she meant, right? Taylor, who saw that, felt worried, and immediately asked Isla to stop Elvira, who wanted to enter the Aulus Hall alone. Isla could only laugh unwillingly at that. She then suggested, what if they just let her? Elvira was the leader of the alchemy faculty, so she felt she could definitely be alone. But what Taylor meant was not that. It was not Elvira who was in danger, but the lower-ranked students. He was worried that Elvira would go crazy and spray whatever reagents were in her hands. Hearing that, they then together tried to stop Elvira, but it was useless. Elvira then told them to stop talking, and invited the 2 of them to break through with her to her room on the 4th floor. Isla then asked, so we just need to go to your room, we don't need to do anything else? Elvira said yes, as long as the herbs are safe. If there are people blocking the way, we have to break through. And when Elvira forcefully broke down the door, she was then surprised when she saw who was inside. Ed was sitting as if he was waiting for them. Taylor then asked why he was in the Aulus Hall, and Elvira seriously looked at him. She then analyzed the situation, the traces of a group of students passing by, a carelessly placed cupboard, and its position with its back to the stairs. Based on all these things, she came to a conclusion. With a faint smile, she found this interesting. She didn't expect this. She then asked, did he want to stop them? Ed didn't deny it, and said that they couldn't go through here. Elvira found this interesting, but did he think he could stop her if she said she was going to break through? She did hear from Zix that Ed had a high magic proficiency, but what he mastered was only basic magic. On the other hand, they had a capable swordsman, a magician who could use magic at the level of a typical first-year student, and an alchemist who showed the best ability this year. She didn't think the 3 of them would lose to Ed. Taylor then asked what his purpose was. He also told him to tell them what happened upstairs right away. Ed just stayed silent hearing that. Seeing his silence, Taylor then decided to immediately rush to attack and force him to talk. Seeing Taylor, who rushed towards him, Ed then threw a chair, but his throw was easily dispelled by Taylor. Elvira looked at their battle and seriously analyzed it. Judging from the flow of the mana, it was just basic magic. Because he was a magician, Elvira felt that Ed must be targeting Taylor, who was good at close combat, but she was then surprised when she saw Ed instead throwing the wind blade upwards. It then broke the chain that supported the chandelier in the sky. Taylor could only stare blankly at the chandelier that was about to fall on him, until finally the chandelier fell, which then caused a devastating effect. But fortunately Taylor could avoid it quickly. The students in the Aulus Hall also heard and were surprised by the sound. Clebius also anxiously asked what happened outside. Taylor then worried when he saw Isla, who fell. He then told Taylor not to worry, she only fell because of the shock earlier. Taylor then asked about Elvira's condition. Elvira told him not to worry about her. Their view was a little blurry because the impact of the chandelier's fall caused dust to fly, and a wind blade then came towards Elvira, which then cut her hair. She was then very surprised by that. The wind blade also cut the shoulder strap of her bag, which made her bag fall. She felt a little panicked at this time and realized that Ed was really serious. She was also sure that something was happening above, and when the flying dust slightly disappeared, Ed, who had been in front of them, suddenly disappeared. Elvira then glanced at her fallen bag, which contained potions that were now scattered on the floor. She then tried to pick up the potions, but Ed then recited, ignition. And a burning fire suddenly burned the entire room where they were. The battlefield was set up, so naturally almost like water flowing. Elvira realized the seriousness of the situation they were now facing. Ed's decision-making was very agile and accurate. She then blamed Zix for not telling them the details about Ed completely. This man not only had a high magic proficiency,